Today we're going to talk about struggling with self-discipline and lack of motivation even though you know exactly what you want in life. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to my channel. My name is Safa and I make videos about Ramadan, religion, improving yourself, finance, and other topics. If you're interested, definitely subscribe. I wanted to talk about this topic for a while because I definitely experience a lot of lack of motivation sometimes and self-discipline, even though I feel very passionate about various different projects that I'm working on. So first, when we're starting something new, whether it's we're trying to start a new hobby or achieve a certain goal, oftentimes we have to understand where these challenges come from. When we're trying to start or work on a new hobby and get into something, whether it's sports, gymming, crocheting, learning how to sew, etc., those are specific things that require us to spend time and learn a new skill and dedicate a lot of effort and hours of our own personal labor to improve our skills at. The second area where oftentimes people are trying to improve their life is something related to a change in their routine or their schedule. So that could be waking up earlier, going to bed earlier. So either you're learning a new hobby or you're implementing some other kind of change in your daily routine. These things you'll find require you to overcome a certain level of inertia in order to be able to get started on these tasks or these goals and to maintain the progress necessary to achieve these goals. So inertia is kind of like the obstacle in front of you that you have to overcome in order to get started or continue your progress when it comes to working on your own personal goals. And the larger this task that you have to do, or the perceived task that you have to do, the harder it can sometimes feel because of the increased effort necessary in order to achieve this task or get started on this task. In terms of personal growth, this inertia or this obstacle that you have to overcome looks something like a fear of failure, a fear of rejection, fear of regret, or even a fear of change. So examples of some barriers that I have personally experienced, and I'm sure many others have also experienced, and I have literally a whole list of these. So just to give you guys an idea, some of these barriers might look like a lack of ideas, not knowing where to start, feeling guilty for the privileges and resources you have and not utilizing them because of that guilt, or just not even knowing how to use them the way other people use them, not maximizing your resources. You could be going through a tough time, which makes it difficult for you to work on your personal goals or your tasks. You can have very high expectations for yourself and also maybe not have a lack of encouragement or positive workspace. You may be required to learn new skills, whether it's learning how to sew or a whole new software. And probably one of the most common ones is feeling afraid to put yourself out there because of what other people may think, or even falling short of your own expectations. Those are a whole bunch of different barriers that you might experience that prevent you from getting started on your goals or eventually falling off of the progress that you do make. And so I wanted to share some solutions, or specifically like a guide on different steps that you can take to make sure that you can stay on track and inshallah achieve your goals. So the first step that I think is very, very important is to understand and raise awareness, personal awareness for your own personal limitations and the resistances that you feel that you have when it comes to working on new projects or new goals. The reason this is important is this will allow you to feel more empathetic towards yourself and not give yourself such a harsh time when things don't work out or you don't meet your own expectations or even the expectations of others. The second step would be to figure out what exactly is your goal and what are the steps you need to take in order for you to achieve that goal. I highly recommend further breaking down those steps into smaller bite-sized digestible steps for yourself, things that will make sense for you. So for example, if you don't need to be reminded about every single detail necessary to complete a task, then you don't need to break it down so much. That's redundant and unnecessary. But if you're like myself, for example, sometimes you really need to break things down into bite-sized baby steps to get through the simplest of tasks, and that's okay. If that's what works for you, then so be it. I highly encourage you to break it down as much as you need to, because we want to make sure this is tailored specifically for you. If you're Muslim, for example, oftentimes a goal that a lot of people have is they want to be able to pray all 5 prayers daily, consistently, and on time. And that can be very daunting if you never prayed before or if you just can't seem to maintain your prayer. Breaking it down into very bite-sized steps could look something like starting with a single prayer and just praying the fard, and then adding on another prayer and continuing to add on the prayers until you're praying all 5 prayers and only the fard. And then gradually get to a point where you're also praying the sunnah prayers. And just keep going until you get to a point where you're consistent, you're on time, and it feels almost natural for you. And not like you have to, you know, break from your routine. Make it a part of your routine. I think this is a really effective strategy, and I feel like a lot of times people do use this strategy and it works really well. So the third step I would encourage you to take is to then work on creating a positive, conducive, encouraging environment for yourself so that you can achieve your goals. So again, with the example with Salah, I would highly encourage trying to keep your prayer mats or your prayer area in an area that you normally frequent within your own home. If your prayer mats are visible to you where you're always at for most of the day when you're home, then you'll see it and more likely be encouraged or reminded to take part in prayer. Simultaneously, while you're adding things in your environment to encourage you to complete your tasks, it's also good to remove things in your environment that are distractions and prevent you from getting to your specific goals. And finally, I would also highly recommend trying to find someone that you can confide in, whether it's a close family or a friend that really understands you, your goals, and what you want to achieve, and kind of use them as an accountability partner so that they can encourage you in a positive, healthy way to achieve those goals that you have for yourself. The fourth step would be to then give yourself a practice period. So that could look like anything from 7 days, a month, or even 3 months, however long you need, where you allow yourself to practice different strategies that will help you achieve your goals. This gives you room for error and allows you to give yourself some grace if you mess up or if you don't meet your targets, because you're just practicing and trying to figure out what works for you. And that way, that allows you and encourages you to not give up so easily. For example, personally for myself, if I don't figure out how to do things within the first 3 or 4 days of me intending to get started on a particular goal or project, I feel like I am just ready to give up. But if I let myself, and if I tell myself I have 1 month to try everything I can to see what works for me, I will be more likely to stick with the plan and stick with my trial and error, essentially, to eventually get to a point what works for me and what doesn't work for me. By the end of that period, I have at least given it a shot multiple times more than if I had just given up within the first few days of trying. That brings me to the last step, which is to track your progress. And the reason you want to do this is because you want to track your wins and celebrate your wins, because oftentimes we do not celebrate our wins, or at least I don't. But you don't want to just track your wins, you also want to track your losses or where you missed targets or not met the standard that you have for yourself. And the reason is not to beat yourself up if you don't meet your personal expectations, but instead to see where did things go wrong and what you can do to improve your ability to perform the tasks necessary to achieve your goals. Essentially, you'll be able to reassess your strategy and improve it over time by taking a look at your wins and your losses. You'll be able to change your strategy gradually over time and eventually come to a point where you have practices in place that work for you, that help you achieve your goals and stay on top of your goals in the long run. So to quickly recap how to overcome a lack of self-discipline and motivation, you want to first understand and identify what your limitations and resistances are when it comes to achieving your goals. Second, you want to have a clearly defined goal and break that down into individual steps that are digestible and specific to you. Third, you want to help create an environment that is encouraging and positive so that you're able to comfortably work on the tasks and get to your goals and meet your goals. Fourth, you want to give yourself a practice period. This will give you essentially a grace period where you're trying different ways to get into the habit of whatever hobby or activity or goal you have for yourself, so that eventually you can stick with it for a longer period of time and figure out what you need to do to achieve your goal. Finally, you want to try to track your progress so that you can celebrate your wins and also reassess where you're falling short so that you can continue to improve your processes so that you can achieve your goals. That brings me to the end of my video. I will say this is the 3rd time I have shot this video, and that's okay because you gotta keep trying, keep practicing and see what works for you. And you gotta really not give up sometimes. Let me know in the comments down below if you enjoyed the video. If you have any tips that you'd like to share in the comments down below, that would be great. And I'll see you guys in the next video.